So Paul, tell us about Artemis II. I know you've, that's kind of a generic blanket statement, tell me about Artemis II. It's such a big thing, but an overview. I know the launch is supposed to be coming up here in the next, 8 or 9, 10 days on the 6th, right. I think is where it's kind of scheduled.
That's when the window opens, correct.
Yeah. So thoughts on the actual mission itself before we go into some of the specifics of your training?
Yeah, absolutely. This is really, really exciting. This is our next big step towards getting humans back to the surface of the moon. It's really a shakedown flight. It's time to take the next version of Orion, and this version, unlike Artemis I, is fit for astronauts. So we have systems on board that we didn't have before, life support systems, some new comm systems and things like that, crew systems on the inside of the cabin that they have to interface with that we need to test out. We need to make sure that this vehicle is ready and capable to support the crew on their journey to and from the moon.
Okay, so with all the video and the articles and news that we see on the crew itself doing all the training and prep and going here and going there, talk about what it's been like to be one of the lead flight directors for Artemis II.
It's really been, it's so exciting, and it's really a privilege to be able to be here at this moment to do this. The range of training that takes place it's not just the crew, it's the flight control team, it's the training team themselves, putting all of these activities together to make sure we have the right fundamentals and foundation of knowledge of the system, of the mission, and then being able to practice those and execute them in a simulated environment. And we've been doing this for years. Crew's been training for a couple of years. The flight control team's been training for this mission since Artemis I ended back in 2022. So we are ready, but it's been really exciting. I'll get you some more specifics. Each of the simulations we do cover various phases of the flight. So we'll have different sims with our partners out at Kennedy for a launch phase. Mm-hmm. We have simulations for translunar injection, for the perigee raise burn, coast phase, for the flyby, for the moon, and then of course coming back and reentry and things like that. So we cover all bases of the flight itself to make sure that everybody's ready to go.
Okay. Compared to normal, quote unquote, normal duties as a flight director, how does it change when you're preparing for something like Artemis II?
So when you say normal duties, it's really interesting. There are so many different things that as a flight director we're involved with, from preparing for real-time operations like we're doing now for Artemis II, to development of new systems and new ways to operate and how we're going to conduct missions for future Artemis and things like that. So for example, I work not only Artemis II, but I'm part of the lunar surface team developing systems and procedures and how we're going to conduct the missions for Artemis 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So it's really exciting to be part of that. We also have the International Space Station mission that's still flying. So as a flight director, even though I'm working Artemis, we still take turns on console pulling shift for the 24/7 ops that we have for ISS. So a normal day, it really just depends on what it is that we're working on at the time. For example, earlier this week, I had two, what we call Orbit 1 shifts. It's our midnight shift for International Space Station. So you're flying the station, taking care of the crew there, coming off of that, and turn around, and now let's start preparing for Artemis II. And it's really great to have that variety and the ability to go from mission to mission and different aspects of the development of that.
Okay. So going back from Artemis I, which was, like you said, 2022, so you've got a few years since.
Yep.
What has the flight directing, I guess you as flight directors, what have you learned since then? What were some of the lessons you took from the first one and you're applying to Artemis II?
So it's really interesting in that, first we'll start with the launch vehicle, SLS. Its performance was flawless on Artemis I. So we know that that vehicle is great. It's going to give the crew a great ride. The core systems of Orion performed very well also. So we know that that vehicle is capable of going to the moon and back. That's great. But as I mentioned earlier, we have certain aspects of this spacecraft because we've got now humans on board that we've never done before. Mm-hmm. So we fly Orion on Artemis I one way, which is very different than how we're going to do Artemis II because there was no crew on Artemis I.
Right.
So how does that work? We have to take elements of things that we learned way back in the Apollo days, things we've learned on ISS and Space Shuttle, and apply them to, okay, how do we fit that into what we're trying to do to get back to the moon? So dealing with everything from, okay, what does the crew do when we have to execute a burn? How does the crew respond to emergencies? How do they conduct daily, day-to-day things, brushing teeth, going to the bathroom, and sleep? And it's a small capsule, right? So how does that work with 4 people? And how do we configure the cabin to make sure that they can live comfortably for the next 10 days or so? Mm-hmm. So that aspect is very new. And so we, through our training process, development process, we're pathfinding and working with the crew and the control teams to figure out what's the best way to fly this mission. And so we think we know we're in a good spot, we're ready to go, and we're going to prove it out. Again, this is a shakedown flight, so we'll see how it goes, and we'll make tweaks and improvements as we go for the next Artemis missions going forward.
So I know there are several flight directors that are going to be involved with this mission,
Yes.
as there are with missions like this. How do you train to do, I know there's no such thing as a perfect handoff, but a very well calculated, smooth transition from one flight director and then the next one maybe coming on and taking over with
Right.
a new set of controllers under them?
So it starts with a couple of things. One, it's the fundamentals of how to be a flight director. How do you lead the flight control team in the room? How do you problem solve? How do you navigate things that are happening both nominally, hey, this is how the mission's supposed to go, we have these events coming up, let's execute it to procedure, or off nominally when we've got a problem, things are breaking, malfunction, worst case an emergency or something. We train on how to respond to that. The fundamentals of how we do that are common across the flight director office. Now, each of us have a little bit different personalities, a little bit different how we like to do things and talk and things like that, but for the most part, it's plug and play. And we train specifically for that portion of the mission that we're going to be working, specifically for Artemis II. So we've got our lead flight director, Jeff Radigan. He's through most of the main events of the mission, so he'll be there for orbit insertion, for the proximity demo that we're going to be doing, for translunar injection and so forth. So he'll be that. We've got Judd Freeling, who's our ascent flight director, so he's in charge of that initial phase from launch to getting it to orbit. And we have Rick Henfling, who's our entry flight director, and his job is to make sure we get the crew on that return back through the atmosphere and splashing down safely and get them recovered. So it's training, it's practice, and we have a pretty good way that we do handovers across the shift. So we take notes, we have a log, and so when we have handover time, it's about an hour long where we'll come in and review what's happened in the previous shift, what's coming up, have a quick discussion on things we need to keep in mind going forward.
Okay. And what part of the process are you going to be in charge with? You talked about some having entry, re-entry. What's your focus going to be?
So I have a couple of things. One, I am in charge of what we call the pre-launch team.
Okay.
So when it's time to start the process of launching the vehicle, my team's the first team on console. We're there for powering up of the systems, and all this is done by the team at Kennedy, but we're monitoring from our end, and then we have certain commanding that we do to the spacecraft at certain points in the countdown to make sure that the vehicle is ready to go. So we work the pre-launch portion. We have some commanding that we do to get systems turned on and checked out on Orion, and then we're there through the start of the loading of the cryogenic fuel that go into the system. Okay. And so my team will hand off to Judd's team, which is the ascent team, and they take it through the rest of the countdown up through launch and into orbit. So the other part of the mission that I will be responsible for is after we get to orbit and we've accomplished the proximity ops demo, we'll be in that highly elliptical orbit going around the Earth to do the system checkouts. When we hit apogee, which is the furthest point from the Earth, we'll actually conduct what we call a perigee raise burn. And by burning at apogee, that'll get the lowest part of the orbit, which is closest to the Earth, at a proper altitude so that we don't re-enter into the atmosphere. Okay. And then from there, I have a couple more shifts where we'll be working what we call Orbit 2, which is that time of shift where the crew will be sleeping and making sure that they're good to go.
Okay. So NASA training aside, and I know there's training is ongoing here all the time, how are you prepping personally?
Yeah, so the preparations have been going on for years now. It's a combination of self-study to make sure you're up technically on the vehicle and what it can do and how it's engineered and put together and how systems work. It's the practice and simulations on executing certain portions of the mission, response to problems and emergencies, working with the different flight controllers on the team to establish that rapport and that team atmosphere. So when we get on console, we kind of understand, they understand my expectations, I know what my team's capable of, and how to push the right buttons and turn the right knobs to make sure we maximize our efficiency and do a great job.
Okay. And lastly, with friends and family, they ask you, I'm sure they've probably asked you a number of questions like, what do you think about this? Where do you think this is going to take us? What are your thoughts on that?
So, like I mentioned earlier, this is our first step to getting back to the moon. The vision that we have is the moon is a logical stepping stone, improving ground for learning how to live on a different celestial body. We're going there to stay. So this is the first step in a long-term lunar presence, which will teach us how to live on another world so that we're ultimately prepping to put Americans on Mars. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be quite a commitment, and one that we absolutely have the ability to do, and we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. There's a lot of science to be discovered, a lot of knowledge, a lot of prestige for the country and our teammates working with us, and it really will be quite an effort to do, but that's what NASA does, right? We boldly go, and we want to push mankind into the future, so really looking forward to it.
If you enjoyed this video, consider supporting our effort to share the news in print and on our extensive website, and now on our new YouTube channel. Contact publisher David Day at area code 409-943-4265 to support the Post newspaper today.